working?
I don't see you, and I don't see myself.
You don't see me?
Nope.
I see you.
Okay.
And
I'm okay if we want to do this without me seeing anything. If that makes it work.
well, you can try clicking your camera on and off again, see if that makes a difference. But right now, I'm
I'm
looking
okay
on.
if we want to do this without me seeing anything.
Okay,
If
no,
that
it's
makes it
actually
work.
well, you can try clicking your
Okay, I
camera
see
on and off
myself.
again, see if that makes a difference. But right
Okay.
now,
If we want to do.
yeah, this is it's going. It's on YouTube now. It's live. Okay, perfect. Now, Jeff, I'm going to send you the YouTube link in case you want to. I mean, it's a little late now, but you can post it on your uh, your page
Okay.
if people want to watch.
So you want me to share this on Facebook?
If you want, that's up to you.
Okay, and this is live right now.
It's actually going right now. We'll start in just a second once I send this out. Uh, okay. And oh, and home. Do posting. Oh shoot. Okay. And Twitter. All right, that's good enough. If people join, they'll join. If not, they won't. Now it's now it's working. I had some people actually waiting in chat before, but it wasn't working, so they probably gone. But if anybody new comes and asks questions, I'll let you know. Okay, so all right, so let's get started. We this is our first session here with the Philosophy Hammer, and it's run by City Councilor Jeff McLaren. He's with us today. Jeff, can you see yourself? Is your camera working yet?
It's not working.
Still black. Okay, that's all
It
right.
went on and off for a while there.
All right. Well, we can see you. That's all that matters. So why don't you introduce the topic, and we'll get going.
Okay, so the topic is Camille Paglia's first major book, Sexual Personae, in which she wants to demonstrate that there's a unity in Western culture, started in Egypt and continues on to today, and that it's alive and thriving in a way that is unexpected for most people.
Okay. So people aren't in the chat right now, but if you are, if you do come in the chat, you can ask questions and answer as we go, and I'll get Jeff to respond as well. So let's get started with the topic in the book.
Okay. So she wants to, I guess, look at all the things in art history that have been glossed over by most academic critics at her time. And a lot of these things, I guess, most people would find embarrassing to talk about. And that's probably because Western culture has evolved over time. And a lot of the things that happened in the past maybe are unacceptable today. But before she gets into that art history, she lays down a certain amount of her philosophy about how the world is and how it functions. And it's quite controversial because she's popping a lot of bubbles, a lot of delusions that she feels that a lot of people have. Um, so one of them that she starts off with is that she contrasts nature with society. Nature, for her, is the all-powerful force on Earth, and society is our way of trying to tame that, to make us feel better, to help us overcome the uncertainty, the fear, the lack of safety that exists in nature. And we've built civilization as a result of that. Now that doesn't sound so bad, except that she wants to say that nature is actually trying to kill us. And the thought that we have a balance in nature, that we have to live in harmony with nature, is a delusion that we tell ourselves. And it may work for a little while, but it isn't the reality.
So
This
is
may
a delusion good or bad that we have this delusion?
she doesn't give it necessarily as a good or a bad thing. It's um, I would say it's a good thing until it's not a good thing. So if you want to act with peace, harmony, and goodwill towards your fellow human beings, that's going to work as long as times are good and civilization continues. However, underlying all of that is the fact that nature is trying to kill you, in the sense of, and it will win, by the way, everybody dies. Um, Nature's trying to kill you through diseases, through aging, through accidents, and it's doing this indiscriminately, without motive, without sympathy. But we're trying to save ourselves, and that's what civilization does. So, insofar as it does that, it's a good thing. It's a good delusion. Uh, it may become inappropriate at a future time when civilization collapses or the Earth decides to correct some of the injustices that we're doing to the Earth. She brings this up because throughout Western culture, Western civilization, civilizations have actually risen and fallen. She traces Western civilization back to ancient Egypt and through Greece, through Rome, through the Middle Ages, and she thinks that we are in a constant tension with. Okay, she looks at Western civilization, calls it pagan, and it's been in a constant tension with Semitic civilizations, which, from her perspective, look at the world, or sorry, they don't look at the world. They're concerned with outer worldliness and with the ear and what it hears. Pagan civilizations pagan civilization is on the other hand deals with the eye, its gaze, and this worldliness. And the tension between these two has been a source of wars and development also for the last several thousand years.
So this so it's ears and eyes is the difference
Yes.
between doesn't this dynamic between pagan uh pagan Western and and Semitic culture kind of automatically set up a an excuse for fascists to make the distinctions that they make?
Hmm. Yes, it could be used that way. She doesn't see that as a being a. I mean, clearly it happened in the 20th century. It doesn't seem to be something that's happened over the last 7,000 years or anything like that. the the big issue for her, or I guess the big event, would have happened when Christianity became the dominant religion of the Roman Empire. For her, that was a time when, um, at the time, the I guess the Jewish culture was in ascendancy, and the Jewish cult that was the start of Christianity was taken over by pagans. This is contrary to the usual way that we look at it. We usually think of Christianity taking a few things of paganism, like say Christmas or or a few other holidays and converting them to Christianity. She looks at it the other way. She says that when Christianity became the dominant religion in the Roman Empire, the pagan Roman Empire, by the use of force, paganized this Jewish sect that was Christianity and made it pagan. And her evidence for this is that it was about that time that images became the dominating thing, the dominating art form in Christianity. So we have crucifixes with bodies on it. Like before that, you never saw God in physical form, and you still don't do that in Judaism or in Islam. Then you see paintings. You see all the sorts of things that are visually helpful. So the stages of the cross, they pray in front of stations, they or in front of statues. They have pictures and images all throughout their worship centers. This was very different from what Jews, Hebrew religion, ancient Hebrew religion, and even Islam does today, which are more Semitic cultures.
Does she get into the significance of having a visual culture versus a auditory one?
Not so much the significance of that, but
Or
she
this,
just points out that our Western civilization is much more visual than it is auditory.
but
Um,
does that matter in any sense?
oh, I'm sure it matters. Yes. So her whole book is, called Sexual Persona is she's looking for certain personas that have been very popular and very determining of our civilization for like thousands of years, and uh, they're visual things like the persona that people put on. The 23 that she finds in this, that she discovers in this book, are visual in almost all cases. I mean, there's mannerisms and there's attitudes and words spoken, but they're primarily visual, and that separates from non-visual cultures.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Do you have the reader in front of you,
The actual book, yeah.
or not the book, but the your
Oh, the notes we talked about today, yes, they're in front of me.
All right. So where are we at here?
So I guess yeah, we just got through the definition, I guess, of a sexual persona, and we talked about the tension between Semitic and pagan cultures. I guess in her first chapter, which she labels Sex and Violence, Nature and Art, she introduces her basic foundation, and that is the contrast between nature and society. So again, nature is the all-powerful thing. It's hugely more powerful than society. It always wins in the end. But society is what creates a delusion for us that helps us feel better. She's very Nietzschean in that respect. Um, and then she gets into sexuality. Sexuality for her is the connection to the the dangerous world out there. And here's where she starts to criticize some of the, um, I guess, third wave feminists. She, by the way, considers herself a second wave feminist,
Okay.
um, and criticizes a lot of the notions of third wave and post feminist feminists. And one of the ones that she starts off by criticizing is that the feminist notions of sexual equality or sexual freedom or sexual liberation, as well as romantic notions of like peace, harmony, and goodwill and happiness ever after in marriage, for example, are all delusions, and they're insane coping mechanisms. They work until they don't, essentially. Um, for
Coping
her,
mechanisms
yeah,
for what?
for living in just for living. If you're living in society, it's helpful to think that the romantic notion uh, that people fall in love, they're equal, they are going to live happily ever after if they insist on harmony and goodwill towards each other, and sometimes it works within the delusional bubble that we have. So it's almost like comparing it in a sense to money or the stock market. As long as people believe that money has value, it has value. As long as people believe that there's value in stock and in the stock market, there's value. The same is true for these cultural delusions. She sees them as delusions because they are grounded in only the belief that it's true. And what she's saying is, it's not really true. It's only true insofar as you believe that delusion. The reality is much closer to, well, people she believes that spoke more of the accuracy of the world are Thomas Hobbes, who was famous for saying that life in a state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. She also believes that the philosophy of the Marquis de Sade is probably more accurate than Romanticism. And she was also very supportive of a lot of what Nietzsche said. Her main, I guess, villain in Western civilization that has built these bubbles of delusion was Jean-Jacques Rousseau, John Locke, and pretty much the whole liberal tradition, starting John Stuart Mill and the utilitarians as well. They created this in a sense to make the world seem safe for them, but it only works as long as other people can be convinced of that. And that's essentially what civilization has done. So it's beneficial to act well in civilization for us, but we have to understand that if we were ever to fall back into the state of nature, it would not be helpful for us to do that. And she believes that all civilizations have risen and fallen, and that ours will too.
So
In our
why can't it be true that the real state of nature is one that's, communitarian or reciprocal? Because it seems to me that you could easily make the case that humans don't survive without these qualities. They're social animals, right? We're not individual. We're not like spiders. We
right. So yes, the sociality of it is what keeps us alive. Essentially, civilization makes living in the world easier, but it's doomed to fail. Just like eating healthy makes you live longer, but you will still die. Exercise will make you live and be more capable in life, but you will die eventually. When you garden, you are bringing order to nature. You're taking out weeds, but it requires constantly to do that every year. And the second you stop, they will take over again. That's the nature of reality, the nature of the earth that we're living in. It's trying to kill us at every step of the way, and we band together for protection. Quite often, the more civilized we are, the greater the delusions we share, the greater advances in technology and science and civilization. But it is a delusion, and because it's a delusion, it will fail, which isn't a bad thing while we're living in it.
Well, hold on. I mean, we've had civilization for the past 2,000 years, more or less straight. Well, we had the Dark Ages, but more or less we've
There
had
is
some.
civilization there, but they do rise and fall. So we don't live in Roman civilization anymore. It was a stage in this grand historical arc that she refers to as Western civilization. Um, Greek civilization rose and fell. Um, these things happen. I mean, some might argue that a Western civilization rose and fell during the Second World War and the First World War. Um, there was a major upheaval. There isn't. It doesn't mean that the whole population is going to die, and that it just means that there's going to be huge changes. Delusions will be popped. The whole after effects of the First World War were a traumatic effect on a lot of people, and a lot of things changed. Same after the Second World War. Um, it may be that a lot of people will die in the next little while as a result of climate change and the world adapting to the stuff, like the Earth adapting to what we've been doing. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be billions of people dying, although it may be. Some ancient civilizations like Crete, Minosia, ancient Egypt, they rose and fell, and they experienced their dark ages, and they rose again. They were influenced by the past. Some of them were much more cataclysmic falls than others. But she says that civilizations rise and fall. And what she refers to as Western civilization, I believe, makes up more than just one civilization. There's been lots of ups and downs. The Black Death was another one. The fall of the Eastern and the Western Roman empires. Uh, yeah, it happens over and over again.
Okay. And how about the paragraph here on sexuality and its relation to nature and its inherent danger?
Yeah, so um, because men in particular are, from her perspective, innately um, cruel. Uh, Whenever you're playing with sex, you are playing a dangerous game, and that dangerous game uh, can't be eliminated if you're playing with sex.
So she's saying
She
there's no
sees
such thing as safe sex.
That's exactly what she says. There is no amount. There's nothing you can do if you're playing in that game. There is no such thing as safe sex, in any sense of the term. And that's where she knocks the idea of feminist notions of sexual equality and freedom as being delusional coping mechanisms. Because if you believe it and your partner believes that there is the possibility of sexual equality, then you will overlook the dangers, and you may both actually avoid them. But again, you may not, because it's during the activities like that that reason and well, you give into primal urges, and there's if you're thinking through it, it's not working as well as if you're not. Essentially, is what she's suggesting.
Um, sex. So yeah, she's saying sex is a far darker power than feminism has admitted.
Yes,
Uh, Behaviorist sex therapies believe guiltless, no fault sex is possible, but sex has always been girt round with taboo, irrespective of culture. Sex is the point of contact between man and nature. Can you speak
and
more on
she's
that
talking
one?
about men there, not just women. Now, she's not talking about women there. She's talking about men, as in
Right.
their point of contact with nature, and their nature is, well, they're very well. We can get into that in a few moments. What men are and how they are different from women.
So does she say it? Sex is our contact point with nature because that's the one time we can throw off kind of the veil of civilization and become animals, our animal selves. Is that what she's saying?
Uh, it's not like we can throw it off. It's where our animal natures do, in fact, take over.
Okay. So she's saying that has a special place for. I mean, there's other instances in civilization. I mean, there's UFC fights. I mean, that's kind of an animal nature thing.
Oh yes, yes, that's all there too. So it's always there, but the strongest civilizational norms and rules and codes and laws take away that as much as possible. It's never fully, it's never complete, but it's when civilization norms and rules fail that you get crime, violence, that kind of stuff. So she looks at civilization as what is saving us from our baser nature. That is why there's always taboos in every culture and every time and every place around sex.
Okay. Okay.
So the point of a sexual persona is that civilization is a sex inhibiting development. It allows us to get along together, to escape the natural state. And insofar as it does that, it must it must um, diminish the sexual drive. The sexual personas are ways that we get back to that, and that for that reason, they're very dangerous.
Okay. All right. Where are we at then here?
Well, I suspect she's still criticizing feminists, and so some feminists have in the past responded with like, it's kind of degrading of men to say that they can't control their impulses, and that's not what she's saying here. She's saying that if you're playing with these impulses, you're playing a dangerous game. It doesn't mean that we can't control ourselves, but when we do, there's always the risk of lack of control.
Okay, so she's saying tr- um, pretending like you can have this free sex and romantic vision of man and women in general is inviting this dangerous game.
Yes. So the dangerous game. I mean, it's possible to live your life getting close to the danger and never actually falling into prey of anyone. But it's also possible that you might become the prey of somebody, and that's why we hear about what is commonly called rape culture today, assaults, sexual assaults of all these kinds. It's a dangerous thing out there, and if one of the things she's famous for is that what a lot of feminists call blaming the victim. So if a young woman goes into a testosterone-filled frat house, starts drinking so that she's losing inhibitions and losing cognitive ability, um, and also wearing stuff that is meant to arouse other men, um, sure, in a properly civilized world, she shouldn't be assaulted in any way, but she's playing with a dangerous situation. And if women don't realize that, she's saying feminism is not serving them well and is in fact leading them into danger where there is a serious danger that is being unacknowledged. And that's part of one of the delusions that she sees feminism foisting on young women.
Okay, so she sees third wave feminism as more dangerous than beneficial
I would
potentially.
say so. Yes, she sees it. I see from her writing. It sounds to me that um, they're making up certain ideas that are not serving women very well, and in fact, they're putting them in dangerous situations. If a woman feels that she can dress any way she wants and have it not affect men in any way, she's deluding herself. Uh, then they
Okay,
respond by
but then
saying,
you could easily argue that men would men might be bad regardless of how you dress, right?
yes, that's also true. She has no doubt about that. Again, the point is that you're playing with a dangerous power. Sex is a dangerous game that you
Okay,
play.
so really going to a party with men in is potentially dangerous in any situation, really,
Yes,
and that's the
and
nature of it.
that is the nature of it. To deny that is not serving anybody. So, an analogous situation, if you happen to be very rich and you flaunt your money in a very poor neighborhood, the chances are you're going to get robbed. You
Fair.
should be aware of the situation as it is. If you're in a marginalized, deprived neighborhood and you happen to be part of the privileged group and you have things that people want, you are playing a dangerous game, and it would be foolish of you to flaunt $100 bills and $50 bills in front of people who are desperate for money.
Okay, so then is she suggesting we go back to a system where men and women are in different dorms?
No, good God, no. She enjoys. Uh, she enjoy. There's civilization is a good thing from her perspective, even if it is a delusion. Um,
Okay.
it her big issue with feminism of this kind was that it's not serving women well to prolong an illusion that they are safe when they are not. The same is true for all of our society. We may
Doesn't
think
this
that
doesn't this let doesn't this let men off the hook for bad behavior though? This
no,
idea that she's
absolutely
talking about?
not. The civilization makes laws, rules, and norms, and we break them all the time. I mean, for example, how many people actually break the law when they're speeding or jaywalking? These are minor, trivial things. there are norms and rules of how we should behave that civilization puts on us. These are the taboos that we don't want to break usually, but under certain circumstances we do. That's how we continue to have procreate, and that's how we continue to have fun. So from her perspective, um, it's she doesn't want to separate the sexes, or she doesn't want to eliminate the fun of sex or anything like that. She just wants people to be smart about it.
Okay. So she's not blaming the victim necessarily. She's saying men should still behave themselves, but that women should know that there are risks.
Yes, precisely. Well, there's risks for men too, as well, as we shall see when we study the sexual persona known as the femme fatale. Um, there are risks to both. It's a greater risk to women, is what she wants to say, and women should know this. Women are feminists who try and minimize that and say that it's blaming the victim, or that men are degrading themselves by saying they can't control themselves, are missing the point.
Okay. Let's move on then.
Okay. So she feels also that Western love, the Western notion, romantic notion of Western love, is also a delusion. It's a coping mechanism that tries to set standards for how things are supposed to be done. But again, it's a delusion. Rarely ever happens that way. It's not. It's often not helpful. But if the delusion continues and both parties, or all parties are involved, believe that delusion and act on it, it can give you the feeling of safety.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I guess now you want to get into the really more controversial stuff.
Yeah, actually, but I just want to move back for just a second,
Sure.
couple sentences, explaining her idea that sex is power.
Yes. It's a huge motivational power. We pretty much order our lives around it. Civilization tries to diminish it, never fully, never completely, because we still hook up, and that's the nature of the world that we live in, and it's always been like that. Every culture everywhere has had taboos about it, and people have still broken them, have still gone beyond them, and still been punished for it.
Okay. All right, let's get into the more juicy stuff.
Okay, so why is it that men are like this? Uh, yeah. Okay. So
This is the Freudian
there.
stuff.
This is the. I guess you could say it's a version of Freudianism. Yes. Men, for Camille Paglia, um, have three great fears in their life: women, nature, and death. These fears, these sources of anxiety, um, are men have developed strategies to try and overcome them. Now, again, they never actually do, but sometimes they feel like they're successful, and that delusion makes them feel better. Talking about men here. And these social strategies, or these strategies, she calls Apollonian. And it starts very early in life. The first act of rebellion a little boy makes against his mother starts when he realizes that he can piss standing up and she doesn't.
So that
At the,
realization alone is enough to realize he has some power over her.
yeah, power, or maybe capacity, or capabilities that his mother doesn't. Now, at this point, she is still the all powerful mother that is providing pretty much everything, but it's the first realization that he is somehow different and can do something that she can't. It's a feeling of power, it's a feeling of accomplishment, it's an enjoyable feeling from a man, for a boy. It's then further reinforced because every time that a boy pisses, he's holding his penis. This provides a behavioral stimulus, she claims, that further reinforces in a behavioralist fashion uh, the power, the effect, the pleasure, the capabilities that the boy has that the mother doesn't. And this is repeated, this behavioral stimulus, this nudge is repeated every day for boys because women just don't do that. They don't hold their genitals when they're going to the washroom.
No, no, not many of them.
That, yeah, that that difference, that biological, practical difference, provides a nudge that separates psychologically and physically, I guess, boys from their mothers. And it continues. Just after puberty, um, the the fact and the sensual connection that semen and urine passing through the same urethra create another regular biological behavioral nudge in boys and men that is reinforced pretty much every time they go to the bathroom. This is how this is the the incentive to action that men have that women don't. Now, it doesn't mean that men and women can't act. Oh no, women can act just as much as men. All it means is that biologically, culturally, the way we live in all cultures, in all places, in all times, men have these extra um, nudges to action. Now, why is it to action? Again, it starts because the child discovers that he can do something that the woman can't.
This is
Now,
quite the extrapolation. So
well, it's not. Yes, it is, and no, it's not. So it's a statistical nudge. So it doesn't mean that some women can't act more than men. It just means that men have this natural tendency or natural push that women don't have. So all the other motivating factors are there for both men and women. So hunger, men and women both would seek food. Um, Men and women are both attracted to each other or to another significant other, and they act on that. But in addition to all the motivations and impulses and forces acting on women, men have this extra one. And that makes a difference, a statistical difference. Camille Paglia claims that as a result of this, actually, before we get to the result of that, there's a few other things that go on to this. Um, Remember, men fear women, and part of the reason that they fear women is first that their
scary.
all-powerful mother had so much power, and then they discover that they have this one power that women don't have. But during the act of sexual intercourse, most men, and this is what she says, enter triumphantly and leave flaccidly, meaning that there's a certain anxiety that's caused after sex for men, that they see that they are drained of power and of strength and vitality, and women don't seem to be much different.
Drained of power and vitality.
Yes,
I mean,
it's
you're
that.
definitely spent after, but like,
Yes,
it's not like you could.
and you're not capable of doing much after the first orgasm for several hours. Women can continue on.
This
That
okay.
difference causes a sexual anxiety in men, according to Camille Paglia, from which they are always running away to by doing something else, by dominating women, trying to dominate nature and trying to overcome death. That that's part of the anxiety that she sees that starts off in childhood and develops throughout the development of males of men.
So
Um,
so hold
mhm.
on. This the anxiety inherent to men and the kind of will to act, or the anxiety that drives the will to act. That kind of makes sense to me intuitively. I'm still having trouble getting understanding how the where how that started. The nugget of that was the boy holding his penis in his hand and aiming at the toilet. Um, I'm having trouble with that A to B there.
Okay, so there's a power in that. She speculates that there may have been initial pissing contests about who could put out a fire in the prehistoric times. But even today, uh, that nudge to act, that's how we become a man. That's how the little boy distinguishes himself from his mother
Oh, so
because he
by
can
by
just stand
act,
up.
like as in literally just holding the penis and aiming, that act alone?
No, well, the first one, that's one. That's a subtle nudge. The very first one is, hey, I can stand up. I can do something. This is a boy speaking, thinking, not maybe not in those words, but in those concepts, but in with that attitude. I can do something that my mother can't do. I can stand up when I piss. This is what makes me different from my mother. I can act and do something, and then it continues on. So every time they go to the bathroom, they hold it and they aim, and it's rewarded. It's rewarding to them because it's slightly pleasurable.
So the
That,
act of being of doing something different and that your mother can't do, that is the
that's how you would define yourself as a boy
okay,
or a
okay, I
man.
see now.
Separate. Now, it carries on because women are different, right? They are reminded every month for most of their lives that they are women. Men don't have that reminder thing, but they have that experience of I can do something that my mother can't. And so that subtle nudge in two different directions, she says, over time leads to the difference in behavior of male and females in our species.
Okay.
So
I
the
can
result, yeah.
I sort of see that. Now how does she explain um you know, maybe more effeminate men or gay men or non-binary or trans men or sorry, trans
Oh,
women?
yeah. So that's yeah, that'll come much later.
Okay,
That's
we'll deal
when we
with that
start
later.
looking at the different sexual personas. At this point, she's just trying to set the world up in order for those to make sense. So from her perspective, the anxiety that men have because we have to act. So women don't have to act; they're women. There's just no doubt about it. They're reminded every month. Men, on the
This
other
sounds
hand,
like a have you heard of incels?
yes, I have.
This is the kind of stuff that incels talk about. So I wonder if they read Camille Paglia.
I suspect not, because if
They're
they did,
very
they might be
upset that
doing their life a little
women just
more.
have things come to them and
Well, it's not necessarily come to them. No,
maybe
no, no,
not
no,
come
no.
to them, but they don't have to
It's the
act or that
Oh
they're
no, they have to act, but to be a woman, they don't have to act. They are reminded, like psychologically, they are reminded every month that they are women. They don't, and that just comes to them in the sense that, like nature, it's a force that they have no control over. It just happens to them. Men, on the other hand,
we're not
trying to
reminded we're men
distinguish them
unless we act and do.
exactly, and that started very early. So the result is, according to Paglia, that behavioral nudge has made some men move civilization forward. And here's one of her major uh, one of her major lines that she says is that controversial lines that she says is that if we had left civilization in the hands of women, we would still be living under grass huts. And what she's claiming is that men, in order because they're pushed in one direction to act, have developed science, technology, religion, art, culture to help alleviate the anxiety they feel towards women, nature, and death.
So
Men's quest.
women
Hmm.
can do all these things,
Yes.
but they are copying men, sort of.
No, they can. I mean, they can do it even better than men in some cases too. But what she's saying is that predominantly the most successful people in the history of the world have been men because of this nudge that they've been acquiring um, since childhood. It also means that most men are failures. As evidence, we can see that there's a lot more men in prison than there are women. Um, they've tried to do something and failed. What you described as an incel, they may have tried and given up, and as a result, that's their sexual strategy. No, we're not going to even try. It's too women are too anxiety causing for me, or whatever they say. What she is saying is that over the last 7,000 years of civilization, men have done this in order to alleviate the anxiety they have felt towards women, towards nature, and towards death. Women haven't had that extra push. but they've had other motivation, which the same ones as men, for like hunger, for wealth, for riches, for success, for all that kind of stuff. But because they lack those three nudges, those three sort of biological, cultural, behavioral nudges, men have in fact dominated women, done most of the work, not work, I shouldn't say work. They've done most of the advancing work. And she actually makes a joke about this on her own behalf. She says that it's because she's thinking like a man, appropriating the tools that men have made, that she can write obnoxious books like this. So she sees herself as acting like a man when she's writing a book, talking about using reason to and history and studies to make these arguments.
Okay. Hold on, chat. Can you tell me if my mic is louder now?
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The chat is saying my mic was quiet. Hopefully it's okay. Okay. I think we skipped ahead a bit. Flowers, birds, and hills are patchwork pattern by the map we are known.
Oh, we haven't got that far yet.
Well, we skipped ahead with the quote about
oh yes,
grass
we
huts.
did. That's right. Okay, we did. Yes. Okay, yeah. So getting back to the top of that paragraph, she moves on from there to suggest that one of the other Apollonian strategies, which leads to delusion, which leads to feeling better about oneself, and this is usually a male thing. Women have much less, from her perspective. Men have the anxiety; they have to prove that they're men, because it's in action that they do that, and it's also their fear of females, of women, of nature, and of death that also motivates them. So our okay, here's your quote. Our focus on the pretty is in an Apollonian strategy that leaves the flowers, the birds, the hills are a patchwork pattern by which we map the known. We map the known, meaning with what we like, not necessarily with what is really there. And she creates this new term, Chthonian. It's got a silent ch in it to describe, it's whatever Apollo evades. So what we missing whenever we make sense of the world.
So we only make sense of what's relevant to us.
Not so much. No. What we make sense of, to make our fears go away.
So maps. We use maps to dispel fears and make things known.
Yes, exactly. So this is she gets this from Nietzsche. Nietzsche believed that the criterion for truth is pleasure, meaning the alleviation of fear, anxiety, or anything negative. So the first explanation that makes sense to us is the one that we'll accept. She takes that and says, we like pretty things because it makes us feel better. So when we look at nature and say it makes me feel better, it's because we're living in a sterilized world that is very safe. Like usually our homes are very safe. You go into nature and your heart starts beating a little faster. You're getting a little closer to danger, but it's a safe danger because it's a park. Say it's been stylized and tamed, but you're getting closer to nature, and that it's invigorating. It's like you're finding something new and exciting because of the world we live in. Nature itself is trying to kill us, and it will succeed at some point. And what we fail to see when we look at a beautiful painting of nature or a beautiful scene or anything like that is the stuff that we don't see. She describes it as the earth's bowels, not its surface. She adopts the word Chthonian as a substitute for Dionysian, which was the opposite, which was what Nietzsche used. But it's the blind, grinding subterranean forces, the long, slow suck, the murk, the ooze, the dehumanizing brutality of biology and geology, the Darwinian waste and bloodshed, the squalor, the rot that we must block from consciousness to retain our Apollonian integrity. So when we believe something to be true, our delusions, we have to block out what we don't like in order to maintain our integrity of that delusion. And that's a dangerous thing,
Like our
especially,
delusions about ourselves.
yes, in many cases. So most of us, most men, don't think that we are a danger to anybody. We are, is what she's saying. All men are dangerous. There is no, there's no safe male.
Wait, well, hold on a minute. In what way are all men dangerous? Just our
So,
capacity?
yeah. So, um, yes. So,
So
consider
even the
how many men
nicest
are in.
guy in the wrong situation is potentially
Yes,
dangerous.
yes, absolutely. She would say that because those nudges that we talked about earlier, they are they are reinforced throughout our entire lives. And the second that civilization or the imposing forces that keep us on the straight and narrow, you might say, are weakened, we'll take advantage of that. It's part of our nature to be men that we need to act. And civilization is what keeps us acting in a quote unquote good way. She, in fact, makes a quote, I think we missed it earlier, that it's society is our frail barrier against nature. Meaning that, where is it here? It's when it's not society that creates rapists, for example, she says. It's the failure of society that allows a rapist to come out. All men are potential rapists. Society keeps us from doing that. A failure of society will allow that to happen. And it's all men.
All men.
All men. Well, okay, I should say all those who have a penis.
Okay. Uh,
I guess
okay.
that's the
Well,
more
that's
politically
not
correct
very.
thing to say.
Um, it's a troubling thought.
It's a realistic thought, yes. She would say it shouldn't be troubling because just behave accordingly. If you're a woman, take that into consideration. Don't be stupid and go to a party and get high and drunk and pass out.
So the responsibility is on women, is what she's
No,
saying.
it's on both. It's on both. So civilization, yeah, women shouldn't act silly be in the wrong place at the wrong, and get rid of their, um, get rid of their, their reason and their ability to judge a situation. But at the same time, civilization is what's keeping men human, I guess, in a civilized way.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we at here?
Okay, so yeah, so we're evading all these kind of things, and it makes us feel better. Um, that's how men are. So now she gets into how women are, and that is the Chthonian is the woman. Chthonian are forces outside our control that just happen to us. And women embody this more than men through three things: menstruation, lactation, and giving birth. These three are cycles that men just don't understand. Women do much better at understanding these things, but that's also how the world works. Men's Apollonian strategy wants to end these cycles. We try and do this in almost everything. So she gives the example of Christianity wants to get to a final end, getting to heaven or the second coming of Christ. Economics wants to eliminate the business cycle. But at every step of the way, every time that men develop some science that is supposed, or some art or something, anything that's supposed to try and end these cycles because it makes us feel better, we fail. It just doesn't work. There's still cycles in economics. There's still cycles within the church. There's everything that we do that tries to overcome nature. Because remember, that's one of our major points of anxiety, as well as
And
women, and as well as
contradiction
death.
too, right?
Yeah, we fail. That's the delusion that men think we can overcome nature, that we can overcome women, that we can overcome death. We can't, but we are deluded and we thinking we can. And it's that delusional certainty that propels us to go and try. And insofar as we try, a very few, create those steps or those progress that move civilization forward. That new technology, the new theory, the new idea, in some cases that actually could destroy the world. So atomic bombs, the internal combustion engine, all of these things were innovations. And she says, pushed by men to try and alleviate something, alleviate a an anxiety, a,
But
a primal anxiety, and it's a delusion.
but she's saying the most delusional societies are the best ones or her favorite ones.
Yes. So the more delusional we are, the more the more interesting we are in a sense. Living a subsistence. If you're a subsistence farmer or a hunter gatherer, you are right in nature. Your life is short. It's dangerous. You're very much alive, but it's quite the same thing. You're fighting for survival at every step of the way. Our lives here in our more advanced civilized society are full of lots of things that we can do that are not really useful for survival. I mean, this chat we're having right now is fun. But it's not really helping me with my survival.
It's a
I don't have to
delusion.
worry about survival right now. We've pretty much made ourselves safe as much as we can be, and we're quite happy with that, so we can do a whole bunch of other things. That's where society becomes interesting. That's where civilization becomes interesting. um, there's so much drama in the world, what we would call maybe first world problems. These things are interesting. I mean, sitcoms, movies, entertainment of all kinds. You don't get that when you're close to nature. You're fighting for survival. It's only by putting up that frail barrier against that and maintaining that we can enjoy the benefits of civilization.
Okay, then. Well, let me stop you because Camille Paglia is not a socialist.
No.
And to build civilization, and to get away from nature and as far away from possible, meaning, wouldn't we want to have an economic system that sets it up so that everyone gets their basic needs met, therefore they can have these more intellectual and higher order needs met in terms of culture and delusion,
Yeah,
which
sure,
would
that could work. But it doesn't have to be that way. So the delusions that I have and the delusions you have might be like 98% the same. The difference would be minor little things. That's We all share a great many delusions, and the small differences are where we have political interchange, political debates. The everything is The major questions have already been answered. Um,
But doesn't capitalism force a certain class of people to be closer to nature in that they are fighting for their next meal,
oh yeah,
and that they have to think
that's
about their survival?
yeah. It does that without a doubt. Yes, I believe all civilizations have done that. Capitalism probably just does it um, more widely because it's a much bigger world today. Capitalism has taken over the world. No other civilization has been quite as wide or as widespread as we are. So yeah, I'd say yes, that would be true.
And back to
Um,
Hobbes, capitalism also encourages. It's a socioeconomic system that brings out the more Hobbesian parts of us, the selfish and the competitive and the aggressive, the cheating,
oh,
because it
not
puts us in a
necessarily.
competition with
So
each other instead of
yeah,
working.
that, yes, that's all true, but it's all within a delusion. So you don't have business say if we don't share the same delusions, it might be much easier to start attacking each other. But we all share, at least in Canada, I hope in Kingston here, that we shouldn't take out guns and start shooting people if we disagree with them. That's a common delusion that we all have
The
to
guy
our
on
benefit.
Thursday did with his knife.
Yeah, so he clearly broke with our collective delusions, and society punished him for that
Well, he punished himself. I think he stabbed himself in the neck.
after he was shot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Jesus. All right. I think let's get back to it here.
Okay, so yeah, the Thonian is the real power in the world. It's not society. Society just keeps us feeling safer. I mean, nature will always get back to us. So we're as we're trying to make ourselves feel safer by using an internal combustion engine to keep us warm, to drive us around, that kind of stuff, global warming is taking place, which might damage us much later. As we are destroying habitats, more wild animals may be coming into cities. I heard recently that there's a big wild boar problem in Saskatchewan, but also ticks. Global
Yeah.
warming has made um, ticks with Lyme disease come further and further north. Nature is trying to kill us, and the more we create a civilization that is,
But we're doing that. We're doing okay. We're
oh yeah, we're
Nature's
doing
always
that
trying to kill us, but
absolutely.
we're making it worse on ourselves because of the way that we have set up our society.
Yes and no. Worse in a way, yes, because there's always going to be newer threats as nature comes back. But we are living in a much better world today than we were 100 years ago or even 50 years ago.
Eh,
I mean, I am. I mean, I've got a lot more stuff, more computers, more capabilities. The internet didn't exist when I was born. Um,
right, but if you're um a someone living in a colonized country or former colonized country,
oh yes, absolutely right.
you might
They may not
you
be.
you might be worse off.
Yes, that's very true. That's part of the nature of our particular civilization is that it exploits a lot of people. But most people don't want to see that. That's part of our collective delusion.
Yes, that's
She
true.
doesn't talk about this, but I think one of her students, who's clearly read her, points out that as a result of industrialization, we are hurting the world and other people in the world a lot more than any other civilization in the history of the world has. Um, so,
We're a lot more
uh,
efficient at it, and we're also a lot more delusional about it, probably.
exactly, we don't see it. So, I look at, say, this clipboard. I wonder where this wood came from, this metal came from, and the paper came from. And I suspect that it was because it was all mass produced. I've, by buying this clipboard, I have created demand that hurt the world more than um, anybody else who might have made a clipboard from a fallen tree. That the difference of industrialization has made is huge, and most people don't see it because it's a delusion that we don't want to see. It makes us feel bad, and we don't want to feel bad.
Okay. Um.
So yeah, she's basically saying that all our Apollonian ideals or actions designed to or to control women, nature, and death are bound to fail. We can't do it. It's a grown failure, and we end the first session on this with the this interesting notion that she has. When Plato was talking about Socrates being the wisest man, as because he knew how little he knew, or how that he didn't know anything. That was the one thing he knew. She laughs at that, and she thinks the really understanding man is the one who realizes how ridiculous he is in his pompousness, in his delusions, in his uh, feelings of grandeur, because that's all that men are. We are acting in a delusional way, trying to conquer women, trying to conquer nature, and trying to conquer death. We will never succeed, and that's ridiculous.
It's a hilarious proposition.
It's a hilarious proposition that women probably understand more than men, especially when they look at men. But the
Right. They
truly
they
wise
they see
man,
us beating our chests and putting on the shows
yes,
and fighting with each other over who gets the I don't know, best pro-
yeah, whatever, and it's ridiculous. It's all a show. It's all an attempt to evade an anxiety, and it's destined to fail. And that's the ridiculousness of it.
So the wise man is he who
Understands how ridiculous he is.
understands how ridiculous, right, which is explains the best comedians,
Maybe, yeah,
I would say.
yes. So if you do not think that you are ridiculous, according to Paglia, you are an immature boy.
Right, people don't like people who take themselves too seriously.
True, but most people do.
Most people
But
do.
she's going to go further than that. You don't take it too seriously. Yeah, it's always good to be a little bit deprecating to yourself. She's saying you're a failure in every sense of the word, and you don't think you are. You're delusional. Because everything you're building is going to be for naught. And until you realize that, you are ridiculous.
You are ridiculous. Okay. So all right, that's that covers this first section, does it not? Is there anything
Yep.
else?
That's about the first 7 pages of this book. Um, and yeah, we'll be doing at least another 7 sessions with her. And yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, she is clearly very controversial. A lot of feminists hate her. She considers herself a feminist. She loves popping people's bubbles, and um, there's a lot of compelling stuff here that just like nobody. When I read this, I was thinking, "Are you serious? I've never thought of this. Like, how much could these subtle nudges that boys and men experience throughout their entire life that women don't? How much of an effect do they really have?" She claims it has a huge effect over like the last 7,000 years.
Could we not imagine a society though where women are the ones being nudged to act? Um, I mean,
Yeah, that would be science fiction, I would imagine. So
okay. So she's
she's
saying
described
it's innate to our culture and
our
to us
biology.
as a species.
Yes. I don't think she would use the word innate. I think she would hate that word, but it's similar to innate. I can't think of a better word off the top of my head. But it's behavioral. Um, it's not innate because I mean, if a guy were to lose his penis, that would change it all, right? Um, it it's partly biological, it's partly cultural, it's partly behavioral, but it doesn't have to be. That's the interesting thing. It's not. I wouldn't say it's innate, but it's pretty close to being innate because men all over the world is standing up.
So from the chat, being cool is for nerds says, yeah, that's a bad take. Women have risen up more and more because of progressive reforms.
Oh yeah, Paglia would say no. They may have fought for those, but they have been appropriating male achievements. That's actually something she says, and I'm looking for that quote. She she basically says, um, okay, well, at one point she says that women who act like men are becoming just as stupid as men. She has a higher regard for women than for men. Women have a certain more wisdom, and it comes from the fact that they're closer to nature. But when women start to act like men, become pompous, become arrogant, become, you know, seeking what men are seeking, they are they're even more pathetic because they're going backwards compared to their true
Okay,
wisdom.
so the performative, stupid, delusional aspect of humanity, that's for men. Men can have that.
Men
Don't
have that,
appropriate
yes.
that if you're not one. Let them
Well,
be
she wouldn't
stupid.
say don't cooperate. I mean, she does it herself. She makes a joke about herself. She's appropriating all the tools that men have developed for her, so she can write this obnoxious book. Uh, and it really is a joke on her in the sense, like she's telling a joke about herself because she acts like a man. She thinks like a man. She uses the tools of men. So, in a sense, she's saying about herself, she's um, she's more despicable than a typical woman who doesn't do that. She's acting like a man. She's appropriating the same delusions as men. However, in her theory, she at least believes that she's looking at the world more clearly than most men. But she enjoys the delusion as well because she really does enjoy civilization.
Chad is saying, well, they fought for the progressive reforms, but they also are now more strong and free after and because of these reforms. So that's it would be an argument in favor of the the third wave and second wave feminism.
Mm-hmm. Could be. But again, Paglia would say um, whenever women try and appropriate the tools of men, they are degrading themselves. No, maybe she wouldn't say degrading themselves. They're taking on the anxieties that come with that power. They're
And
taking on the pain that goes with it too. It's like, so men are acting partly for anxiety, for to relieve anxiety, but in so doing they create more anxiety for themselves. So when they become rich and famous, for example, they fear losing that as well. Women also when they become rich and famous, fear losing that. So they, I mean, it may be worth it for some, I don't know. But what she's saying is that women who deny their natural wisdom that comes from being women, and adopt the delusions of men are, in a sense, working against themselves.
Okay, yeah, or what, working against their own nature and
Nature.
interests.
Maybe not interest. Interest is, I mean, they have an interest in prolonging and building civilization as well. They just don't have those three nudges that we talked about earlier.
Okay, so because we have the nudges, this is our business. Um,
Not exclusively, but yes, it's what makes us men.
and we have to play that game, or else we fail as men.
Yes, and we fail as men anyway.
We fail
It's
as
just
men
that,
anyway, but we're compelled to play this game.
yes, and the compulsion begins the moment that we think we're superior to our mothers because we can piss standing up.
Okay, but hold on a minute. Women reward men playing this game well, right? By becoming their girlfriends, their wives, and their sex partners.
Yes, that's in civilization. Yes, there are there are norms of behavior that do that. Yes, so in our society, we reward men that are successful. Um, that's just how it happens to work. If we didn't have society, the successful man would be the strongest one who forces himself onto another woman.
Well,
That's
even
that's how it would happen in a state of nature. Society changes the rules in a sense, and society decides what those rules are. So every society, in a sense, has a different code. Even within a society, say Canada, there are different codes within different uh, groups and different ages. That's all negotiated in a sense. Maybe not negotiated is not the right word, but it's determined by the culture. And what she's going to say later is that it's stultifying. It's it reduces the sex drive, and that's why we need these sexual persona to overcome that. To play with sex, which is a dangerous thing, in a way that is able to procreate the species and have fun at the same time.
one last thing. She's friends with Jordan Peterson, obviously, but he would disagree with her, I think, on the Hobbesian nature of the hierarchies that would emerge there, because he likes to talk about how um, what actually happens in a natural state is that it's actually not the most tyrannical, violent, large male that wins all the women. It's because the other males in the troop won't put up with that male. They get one that's more benevolent, who does have violent, can be violent, but doesn't use it in a malevolent way. Otherwise, the other males will gang up on the tyrant and overthrow him.
That's his delusion.
That's Peterson's delusion.
Yeah, we'll let that be his little secret.
Okay, that's
No,
what
I'm kidding. So
apes apparently
uh,
do.
yeah, it may be true. I mean, that could might. I mean, it's conceivable that could happen. Um, I think what Paglia is suggesting is that all these theories that men make up are made up. They're extrapolations from reality, and they're meant to help him feel better about it. Um, and somehow that theory that he believes there, and of course he's found evidence for it. I mean, there are flat earthers out there who find evidence for flat Earth, makes them feel better. Uh, all the theories of science, art, and stuff like that, they are designed to make us feel better. The truth, again, the criterion for truth in our world is pleasure.
Yeah.
And
What if a theory is right? Like theories can get peer reviewed though. Um,
by the people who share the same delusions.
that
So I'll give you an example. This is from I think it's Thomas Kuhn, the scientific Nature of Scientific Revolutions. The If the Earth was at the center of the universe, or if the sun were at the center of the universe, it you can make the math work with either one and have the world, the planets and the epicenters and all that kind of stuff work. You could actually get a spaceship to Mars using either theory, because you can make the math work. One just happened to be easier, and that's why we switched. But the delusion is that both of them could be wrong. But the fact that you can make the math work means that you can pretty much make any theory work. You just have to keep adding stuff to it. Any explanation will work. That works can be worked. There's no one single answer to it. So if you had like the old Ptolemaic system where the Earth is at the center of the universe, that's what it looks like. I mean, you look out there, that's what it looks like. We don't feel the Earth move, we see the stars move, and you can calculate that. You put the sun at the center of the solar system, and suddenly the calculations become easier, but you can still calculate it.
But if men are compelled to play this game, then it's
Mm-hmm.
also in their interest to overturn uh, uh, dominant narratives about the scientific consensus and become the new guy who broke the mold
Mm-hmm.
and came up with something new. You get
He's
fame
rewarded
that
for
way.
that.
You move up the hierarchy that way.
Absolutely, you can.
So it's not like there's science is a completely lost model because it's people just agreeing for the sake of models being likable. There's
Yeah,
the simulation model was popular a few years ago that that the entire universe is a simulation, but that got finally disproven just recently. But the fact that that was even an idea in the first place, that doesn't work in anybody's benefit for that to be
oh,
true.
oh, it could. It could. It's just a failure of our imagination. I don't personally want to invest enough time and effort to make it uh, to show how it's to my benefit. Somebody might. Um, yeah, we are striving to make ourselves feel better. So you have these flat earthers out there who say the earth is flat, and it makes them feel better. That's their way of doing it. And there's at least as many ways as there are people on earth for making them feel better about their anxieties.
Well, she's very post. If this is the way she's thinking, then that's very postmodern.
Oh, I would say she's postmodern. She's challenging definitely the standard belief structures of received wisdom. She she believes it's all pretty delusional. I would say that qualifies her as a postmodern.
Yeah.
Postmodernism being theories that test or put into question existing received wisdom.
Okay, but then at the same time, she's essentializing um, men, especially, and women, um, and giving them some kind of unchangeable throughout the history qualities to them uh, that would make her seem more like a modernist.
So yes, there are some unchangeable things. Women will always menstruate, lactate, and probably give birth. That hasn't changed. I would say that's looking at reality. What we do about that, how we overcome our anxiety. So men are anxious about that. It creates anxiety. There lots of different cultures have done something to alleviate their anxiety. So um, somebody, I think it was you, actually brought up some culture that shuns women who are menstruating and locks them away somewhere.
Puts them in a hut for a week.
Thank you. Yes, that's one way that this male-dominated culture alleviate, or some men, whoever created that, alleviated um, their anxiety about this cycle that they don't understand. We do it differently. We ask women to hide it, and so we develop menstrual products. Other cultures have done different things. So whatever there's an probably an infinite number of ways that we can deal with our anxiety, and culturally it could be very different from what it is now. Other postmodernists might have more positive ways of looking at it and say that this could be better for me or for that person or for this group if we change this. There will be, of course, a counter group that says, no, no, that's not a good idea. It's just going to hurt me. That's how civilizations change. And she's cataloged how, well, the book, most of the book is cataloging how sexual personas have changed over the last several thousand years.
That'll be good.
Yes. Oh yes, I promise you it will be.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll be it for this time then. Uh, Next time, I think we figured out our technological issues, so we could probably actually do it even easier together right after the meeting next time with just one computer. Um,
That would be cool because I actually can't see anybody or anything.
that's okay. We can see you.
Okay.
Um, all right. Well, 2 weeks from now, we will adjourn till then, and we'll keep going with Camille, and see if it is true that she is a misogynist, fascist. Um, uh, yeah, go from
No,
there.
I can tell you she's not misogynistic. I think she believes that women are certainly far superior to men. Um, and I don't think she's a fascist either. Uh, she just understands that there are forces in nature that we cannot beat, and we've got to deal with them. We think we can beat them. That's our delusion.
All right. Well, that's it for now. Let's end it there.
Okay,
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
my
See you next
pleasure.
time.
See you next time.
All right. Bye, chat.